Just a quick disclaimer, while I was editing this video, Sony actually came out and said that they will not be closing the PS3 and PS Vita storefronts, which is wonderful news for everybody that still wants to play all those old games, and it's a great win for games preservation, but I wasn't necessarily going to redo an entire video just for that little bit of information, hence the disclaimer. Regardless, enjoy my video. Greetings, gamers. So, I'm going to try something a little different. I want to focus a bit more on gaming news. Events that's happening in the industry, just trying to keep up to date with the industry that we love so much. Now, the first thing that I'm going to talk about is PlayStation, particularly the direction that Jim Ryan is taking it. And please, don't get me wrong, this isn't an attack on Jim Ryan. I just think that perhaps his direction that he's taking PlayStation, or the brand as a whole, is not necessarily in the best interest of the consumer. I mean, credit where credit's due. Jim Ryan has been with the PlayStation brand since the beginning, and I think you can just look into the PlayStation's past and see what amazing work this man has done. For a lot of us, PlayStation has been the de facto choice. I mean, I won my first PlayStation back in 1999, and I've stuck with it ever since. I had a Genesis console in the past and a Commodore 64 and all of that, but I usually associate my gaming with PlayStation these days. Since the PlayStation was launched in 1994, or right up until November 2019, the PlayStation has sold over 450 million units. That's PS1, 2, 3, and 4. That's huge. I mean, the PS1 eventually outsold the N64 and the Sega Saturn for that generation. PlayStation now has 3 best-selling home consoles of all time. That's insane. So it's the PS1, the PS2, and the PS4. The PS4 breaking the Nintendo Wii's record only recently, well, as recent as 2019. And as of February 2021, Sony confirmed that 4.5 million PS5 consoles were sold through December 31st, 2020. That's a very small window from launch up until the end of 2020 to sell 4.5 million consoles. Now, to add a bit more perspective on that, 10% of those sales are to scalpers. That's 450,000 units just collecting dust in some scumbag's basement. Let's just look at some of the prices that these guys are selling it for. If I check on eBay now, some of the pricing is 358,000 Rand, 143,000 Rand, 35,000, 28,000. That's ridiculous. I suppose people with more money than sense will end up buying this, but I don't see any reasonable person spending that kind of money on a brand new console. And those aren't even for bundles. That's just the console and the controller, and that's it. 143K. That's nuts. So despite this rather dubious start to this console generation, the machines performed really, really well, and people seem to be very happy with it. Even though there aren't that many next-gen games that just jump out at me and say, yes, buy this console. I mean, I'd love to play Demon's Souls, but it's just not the type of game that sells a console, especially at launch. Like when the PS1 got launched, it had titles that really sold the machine. I really wanted to play Ridge Racer, and that's what got me frothing for a PlayStation. I just don't see that same kind of froth for the PS5 at the moment. Granted, I've got a PS4, and I skipped the PS4 Pro upgrade. It would be nice to play my entire back catalog and all the games that I haven't finished yet, because let's face it, we've still got a whole bunch that we haven't completed. It would be great to play all these games with the updated graphics and performance and all of that comes with the next generation. I just still don't see any reason for me to buy the console right now. So I want to get back to the point of this video, that Sony, in my opinion, has always been an industry leader, and the PlayStation 5 had an amazing launch. So when they recently announced that they're closing the Vita and PS3 stores, and with this recent article about the CMOS battery, I mean, I'm starting to get a little bit worried about the future of my games. I'll link an article in the description explaining why this is such a huge issue. So I'm pretty sure that Sony has made a pretty penny on this whole disaster about the PS3 and Vita stores closing down. There's always going to be some of us out there that will be interested in playing older games, and we're just not going to be able to find them in the future. There's always going to be an issue with licensing, or maybe the servers are offline. So a lot of these games are going to be lost to the ether, which is really, really sad. There's some really great titles out there that we're just not going to be able to play again. And I'm not saying that all these games are amazing and classics and everybody has to play them. There's a lot of crap out there that should rather just be forgotten about. I just think that it's really important that we preserve all these games. So I've kind of gone off on a bit of a tangent here. At the moment, Sony seem to be banking on their huge AAA titles, and they're neglecting the smaller studios who produce titles in the $20 to $30 range, which is really, really cool. A lot of us spend our money in that range, and I found a lot of joy in playing titles in that range. It's still a lot of money if you convert it to rands, and Lord knows gamers will spend that kind of money if they really want a title, but that's not the point. There's got to be a better way for us to be able to play games online that doesn't necessarily mean Sony charging us to use it for 3, 6, or 12 months. They dangle the free monthly game carrot, but that's not good enough. Like, why do I need to go to subscription service just so that I can play with my friends? The fact that Jim Ryan said in 2017 that the level of interest in indies out of PlayStation is temporary is also a little concerning. It just seems to me that Sony is shifting their focus from being the brand where you can play all sorts of games and discover new experiences and stories. Like that has been a hallmark and a cornerstone of Sony, in my opinion. I've bought into the PlayStation ecosystem, and I think a lot of you have done the same. And I'm starting to lose faith in the brand. They seem to be more focused on the entertainment side of things, with movie offers, music, highlighting streaming services, alongside pushing out big titles like God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn. And that seems to be the focus now. They want to push out all these huge AAA titles and kind of neglect the titles that would fall into that $20 to $30 price range. I mean, a lot of us don't necessarily want to play an 80 to 100 hour game. Some of us just want a quick and short experience where we do feel like we get our money's worth. The demographic breakdown for gamers now is that 21% is 18 years and under, 38% is between the age of 18 to 34, and 26% is 34 to 55 years. And between that 38% and that 26% demographic, we don't necessarily have time to sink into a game that is 100 hours or something. A lot of us just don't have that luxury of being able to spend 100 hours on a game. And I mean, that's not a bad thing. We all have our lives and we all have things to do other than gaming. I've got huge enjoyment and satisfaction out of playing games like Journey, Hellblade, Hotline Miami, Rez, Geometry Wars, Neverending Nightmare. I mean, these games were great. And I enjoyed them just as much as I enjoy playing Metal Gear Solid, GTA, Bloodborne, God of War, and Horizon Zero Dawn. It almost seems like it's arrogance to assume that we're so loyal to the brand that we'll do anything to play the latest games and the biggest games. And for Sony at the moment, the latest games means these big AAA titles. It doesn't necessarily look like there is anything in between. Now, I could be wrong, and I have seen some titles on the horizon that do look like they're not necessarily in that AAA sphere, but Sony's focus is specifically on making these huge, massive games. And now we're seeing that they're concerning themselves with making a remake for The Last of Us. And this caused huge drama and outcry online. Like, why do we still need a remake of a game that's not even 10 years old yet? I don't get it. Is Jim Ryan or Sony that out of touch with the consumers? This just pushes and reinforces the idea that Sony don't care about games preservation, and they're perpetually going to sell you the same game over and over, just with new graphics. Like, I don't get it. And I'm not an expert, but I don't necessarily think that's a good way of running your business, just banking on nostalgia. Jason Schreier from Bloomberg reported that in 2007, a group of about 30 developers were recruited to form a new development unit within Sony. And they had the idea that they would expand on some of the most successful game franchises. And the team who were working on The Last of Us remake for the PS5 had the IP yoinked away from them and then given back to Naughty Dog. And these were people that have been in the industry for a long time. This was a group of about 30 that was curated by a really top designer within Sony. And it just seems like Sony don't care, you know? It's not a good look. It just seems like Sony is taking the safe bet. You know, let's just remake every single old title in our back catalog rather than coming up with something new than designing a brand new game. They've sold 4.5 million consoles in just a couple of months, so who knows how many more they're going to sell in the future. The 2018 God of War game sold 20 million units, and it just still seems like Sony are playing it safe. They'll rather continue with the God of War franchise. They'll rather continue making remakes of The Last of Us instead of coming up with something completely new. And it's sad because it just seems like smaller niche titles are going to be a thing of the past. But I mean, isn't that the essence of making games? You know, it is a very competitive field, and that's why I think it's so important to support the smaller developers, the indie developers, because there's a lot of creativity and good ideas that are coming out of these smaller studios. Like, there's mountains of crap on the PS2 and PS3. Hell, the PS4 has its fair share of crap too. Shadow the Ronin, Sword of Fortress, the Omnimusum, and The Life of Black Tiger, they're all horrible games. But we need these studios as much as we need Santa Monica Studios, because when more studios are making games, chances are that you may stumble upon a real diamond in the rough. Naughty Dog came out of nowhere and gave us Crash, and then they hit it out of the park with Uncharted and The Last of Us. We need these smaller studios in the sphere so that they can push creativity and bring new ideas to the table. Sony have always been ahead with their exclusives, and adding in remakes of some titles and sequels to old favorites has always set them apart, but that's not enough now. The good faith and loyalty that we have with the brand will sell units, we've seen that, but I don't think it's a model that they'll be able to sustain for future generations. Who knows? Maybe they'll prove me wrong. I certainly hope that I am wrong, and that I'm just being a little pessimistic due to the fact that it's a symptom of what's been happening in the world for the past year. But from where I'm sitting, it's just not looking good. Anyway, thank you for taking the time and watching my video. Leave a like, comment below. I'd love to hear what everybody else thinks. Hopefully I am wrong, and I'll see you guys next time.